When I just started my YouTube channel 5 years ago, I remember thinking, while I was taking so much effort to record the video, will actually anyone ever bother to watch this video? And now we are here, a few years later, and I just got this special gift from YouTube in my mailbox. 100,000 subscribers to this channel. Honestly, I've been extremely surprised myself that this channel teaching violin lessons would ever reach that amount of subscribers. I truly thought that 100k would be something for the more popular channels doing more popular things like makeup, vlogs, etc. But classical violin playing? Truly, I'm very impressed, and I'm also so grateful to know that so many of you all over the world are practicing the violin with me and enjoying to play music. As reaching 100,000 subscribers is such a special occasion for me, I decided to do something special on the channel as well, and this is a Q&A. And recently I just posted on my YouTube channel, Instagram and Facebook that you can ask me any questions really that you wish to ask, and I will answer as many as possible in this video. I wasn't sure how many questions I would receive, but well, I received a lot of them. I'm not sure if I can answer all of them, but I will try to answer as many as possible in this video. And if I don't come around to answer your question, maybe I will create a tutorial video on it, because some of the questions can actually also be a great new violin tutorial. So I divided the questions that I received in 3 categories: Julia, me as a person, me as a musician, so everything music related in my life, and the third question is more like violin teaching related questions. I will be sure to put markers on the video so that you can go to the part of the video that you are most interested in. And let's start with our first category in which I received the most questions, and that is my musical background. So the first question I received is, how many musical instruments do you play and how many do you own? So first of all, what might be interesting to know is that I grew up in a musical family. Both of my parents were music teachers, and hence we had a lot of musical instruments in our house. They were basically used for their work. So I had a lot of access to a lot of different instruments, and I definitely did make use of that. So first of all, I of course played the violin. This was my first instrument, and it is also one of the only instruments that my parents cannot play themselves. So I will get later into why I started playing the violin and why not one of the instruments my parents played themselves. So the first instrument I got acquainted with, I guess, is the piano, as my mom was a classical piano teacher. So of course the piano was something I grew up under. I still remember playing under the piano a lot, and of course I also tried to play some keys on the piano every now and then when I was a young child. And also I had a xylophone. I'm not sure what it's called in English, but it is this thing where you can do like ping, 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 ping. And I also used that. But the first instrument that I truly learned how to play is the violin. I started first time when I was 7 years old, and at that age I was not concentrated at all, so I had to stop at some point again and restarted when I was 10 years old and was a lot more concentrated, and from that age onwards I really studied a lot and was extremely motivated to learn the violin. Later, I also had a time where I felt a little bit depressed regarding the violin. It's a whole other story, but at some point I felt a lot of pressure to achieve a certain level of violin playing, and hence I lost some of the fun in violin playing. And in that time I got really interested in playing piano. So I started playing the piano at the age of 14, I think, or 15. I think I was 14 years old. Yes, and I started with learning how to play chords, and later I also learned how to play classical piano. Some of the pieces that I played were like Chopin preludes. I really loved to play them, but I also improvised a lot and composed my own pieces, both songs and classical pieces on the piano. Later, when I think I was 15 years old, I got my first boyfriend and he played the guitar, and of course I was like, oh my god, that's so exciting. And of course I also wanted to learn how to play the guitar. So after him and also my other friends that played the guitar, I started learning how to play the guitar. And I think 1 year later or something like that, I played like simple songs with chords, mostly accompanying myself while I was singing. So I also started singing a little bit. And also I learned a few like easy soloing tricks that I could use when playing some solo, some simple skills, but I never got really good at that. But I could at least accompany myself playing, and I also learned how to do finger picking techniques with plucking the strings basically. And at some point I also learned a few classical pieces on the guitar, but soon I realized, oh my god, this is so difficult. And I already had so many other instruments I was playing that I didn't want to get into that part of guitar playing. I think when I was around the age of 17 or so, I played in a school band, and in the school band we had a lot of guitar and piano players, but we didn't have any drum players and bass players, so I decided I will learn it myself so I can basically take that role in the school band that I took a big part in. I think I was also partly leading the school band on our local high school, like, you know, like organizing everything, getting the musicians together. So at that age I also learned how to play a little bit of drum and bass. That was only to make sure that during the concerts we had somebody playing the drum and the bass in the school band. And I just learned some basic techniques. When I was studying, this was at the age of 20, I got from a friend I could borrow a singing saw. And this was a new obsession of mine. I started practicing a lot of skills on the singing saw, and if you don't know this instrument, it is a little bit similar to the violin in a way, in the sense that there's no frets or no keys. So you really have to do everything by ear and listen what it sounds like. And it is basically like a saw, but you play on it with a violin bow, or actually often a cello bow, but I use the violin bow. And I practiced that for about a year, and I gave a little concert with a singing saw and a choir locally, and that was very, very fun. I learned how to play some very special Christmas tunes on the singing saw, and later also played in a band with it, and it really creates a very special sound. Oh, and before I forgot, actually the very first instrument that I started playing was this flute that you learn to play in school. After school I learned how to play this wooden flute. It is one of the most common instruments for little kids to learn after school in the Netherlands, so that was also an instrument I learned before. And as my dad was playing the flute, I don't know what it is called, normal flute, I guess. I played a few songs on it, but I couldn't play it very well because for me blowing was extremely difficult and not natural at all. So I quickly quit because I realized, oh my god, I didn't really like playing it. I don't know, I really like the feeling of bowing and playing with my hands, but I didn't like blowing as much. I felt like, oh, it takes so much energy. So I quit that pretty quickly again, so I never got around to actually play it seriously or well. But I think still the instrument that I played over all the years was the violin. This is the instrument that I play best. I would say piano would be my second best instrument and guitar my third. So it is still extremely useful to have played the different instruments. I can really relate to anyone learning a new instrument, as I've done it many times. And also it is extremely useful when I'm teaching the violin that I can accompany my students. So even though it might seem like a lot of side tracks, in the end it does feel like it all comes together and helps me to become a better music teacher. As to how many of these instruments do I own, I currently have a piano, a guitar and a violin, still the same ones as that I used to have when I was young. So the piano I got from my mother, and also the violin I had it since I was 12, and the guitar I got it also as a gift from my dad. So I have these instruments still to this day. And unfortunately, I don't have any other instruments. I never really bought any new instruments myself. In general, I am always really interested in playing instruments, but not as interested in purchasing instruments. I don't know why. I know a lot of musicians really like that, but I don't really. So normally I am borrowing an instrument when I get a chance, and then I try to learn it until I have to give it back to my friends. So always when I get an instrument for a few months, I'm really excited and will practice it. And then sometimes I exchange instruments with others. So yeah, that is it when it comes to which instruments I play and which instruments I own. Another question I received was about my violin, if it is an antique or where did I buy it. So this violin I bought it secondhand from a lady playing in the orchestra, and she, I think she wanted a better instrument, so I got this violin. I bought it with the money that my grandfather gifted me before he died. He gifted a substantial amount of money to all of his grandchildren right before he thought he would die, and from that money we purchased this violin, and yes, so this is how I got this violin. Meanwhile, my grandfather has already died, but they always say he is still listening to me playing in heaven. Another question I received was from somebody that actually knew from one of my videos, I guess, that my mother is a piano teacher, and they asked me, why did you learn how to play the violin? And the reason for that is actually that my parents took me to an orchestra when I was about 8 years old or something like that. Quite a few times we had like, it was like a card that if you are a music teacher, you can more easily and cheaper go to orchestras. So they brought me there sometimes, and I always loved the violin players. I always asked my parents if we could sit on the upper side, on the right side, so I could like look at the left and look at the violin players from above. And I remember just watching them in awe and really loving the sound of the violin. For some reason, I was very mesmerized with violin playing. And when I once tried it, I still was very enthusiastic about it. So this is how I started. At some point also, my mom's friend had a daughter and she played the violin. So I once was able to join her at her lesson to watch. And when I saw it, I was so excited. I directly wanted to do it myself as well. And I actually felt a bit jealous that she could already play the violin, like in a good way jealous. I also wanted to do it. And yes, I was very excited to try it as well. So that's how I started to play the violin. It was not really directly related to what my parents wanted to play me. It was truly something that I was really enthusiastic about, and when I got the chance to learn an instrument, my parents told me I am able to take lessons if I want to. I was like, definitely I'm going to take violin lessons, because that was always my favorite instrument. Someone else asked me the following question. I wonder if you still have time to play and practice the violin, and if so, what are you currently working on? So yes, I still have time to practice the violin, and at least I make time, and sometimes it is not that much, and I can truly relate to those of you who say, I don't have time every day to practice an hour, because I don't have that time either. I have a lot of work to do regarding the violin school and regarding everything else that I'm doing in my life. So I don't always have time to practice every day, but still I make time to practice, and I try to make time to practice at least every week a few times. So currently I am studying a few pieces. I am studying Sonata from Debussy, very nice piece like da 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 da. And I'm also practicing Rondo Capriccioso Introduction and Rondo Capriccioso from Saint-Saëns. So it's truly one of my favorite pieces already since I'm a child. So I'm so excited that I'm finally playing this piece on the violin myself. So those are the pieces that I currently work on. I also still take lessons with a teacher, and yes, I still really enjoy taking violin lessons, and I think also that's the great thing about violin playing, and at the same time also, I guess, it can be frustrating because you never reach the level that you desire to play at, I guess. I mean, there's always something better, and so you can always keep practicing and it never gets boring. But sometimes, of course, it can also be a little bit frustrating that you feel like I practiced for 20 years and still I feel like I have so much left to learn. But I guess the first thing always feels stronger to me. I really like learning new things, and I definitely think that in music learning, I definitely found some challenge that I will basically never achieve, and in a way that makes me very happy. I make little amounts of progress every day on everything, and kind of I guess makes life more interesting to dive into so deeply into any subject and try to master it, despite how hard it is. I don't know, there's something romantic to it. Another question I received is, how long did it take for you to learn violin as in a level meaning something to you? That's a good question. I never really thought about it, but when I'm reading the question, I directly feel like at once. I think the violin directly had meaning to me. It wasn't that if I achieved a certain level, then suddenly I felt like I could enjoy it. From the very beginning, I enjoyed the process of learning it. And I do feel like that's the case with a lot of musicians, that they enjoy also the process of learning and struggling in a way. And of course also the small moments of achieving something, because every single week that I practice, even though you don't really see it as easily from the outside, I always feel like I did achieve something and I did learn something new. And I felt like that, especially in the beginning. I feel like especially in the first years of playing, you make progress so quickly, because the better you become, the harder it becomes to become even better, if that makes sense. So in the beginning, I felt like every week and every month I was learning new things, and that was extremely exciting for me, and it directly felt like it improved my life. I enjoyed practicing the violin. I still remember going on holiday with my family. We went camping, I think like 30 kilometers away from our house. We always camped very close to our house, and I thought we were like in another country, really far away from, I don't know. I thought that we were very far away, but normally we were just in the forest next to our house, basically. And then I brought my violin all the way to the place where we were camping. And I still remember really like feeling like, oh, I should bring my violin, otherwise I cannot play for 1 week, and becoming sad with the idea that I couldn't. And at that time I was still playing very simple songs like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Another question is, what is your practice routine? That's a good question as well. Well, we have my ideal practice routine, how I think I should actually practice, and then what I actually do in reality. So what I think I should do, I do it sometimes, but mostly I don't, to be very honest, is practicing my skills, then practicing my etudes, and then practicing my pieces. What I usually do is getting so excited about a piece that I directly want to start my piece. Then I realize it sounds really bad, so I have to practice a skill first in order to actually play something so it sounds okay, and then I go back to the piece. And normally I practice small parts of the pieces that I play, and I also really love practicing with piano accompaniments. So another question, who is your favorite composer and what would you tell him if you would meet him in reality? Wow, that's a good question. I don't know if what could I say to any composer? I don't know. I would probably ask them a lot of questions about what it was like to live in their time, how they created the pieces. I am just really curious what it was like to be a composer, and also I'm curious what it was like to live in the past. I'm in general really interested in history, what it was like to live in 1800. What did it feel like, what were you worried about living in this time? So I would probably ask them personal questions about what it is like for them to live life, but also how they achieved what they achieved. And what are my favorite composers? I would say mostly romantic composers. So I really like romantic classical music. So for instance, Saint-Saëns is one of my favorites. That is what I'm practicing right now. I also love Rachmaninoff, more like piano pieces, but still I really like it, and Chopin also on piano. And I like so many composers, but basically every romantic composer I love. I also love Bach, even though it's not romantic classical music at all, but I really like the partitas and sonatas of Bach, the solos for violin. And yes, that are some of the things I really love listening to. Oh, and before I forget, I also really like Debussy and some more modern composers, Prokofiev, even though, Sibelius, I love Sibelius. Basically, I love a lot of classical music. Okay, there's still a lot of questions left about me as a musician, but I will now go to the next category before this video turns into like hours long. So let's go to the category. Maybe I will just do a second Q&A with all the teaching related questions, because that is also a lot and it is more like violin learning focused. So maybe that will be another video so that those who are more interested in my background can watch this one, and those who are more interested in specific questions about violin learning, how to learn the violin, can watch that other video. So let's go to me as a person. Where are you from? So I'm from the Netherlands. Some of you have heard it. A lot of you are actually that are from the Netherlands yourself, they recognize my accent. Some also say that I have a French accent. I don't know if that's positive or negative. I love the French accent. I really like the French accent, especially in movies. Okay, also, what other artistic outlets do you have? So what creative things do I do, I guess? Interesting question. Let's think about it. I think I am not so creative outside of violin playing, if I think about it now, or outside of music in general. I mean, I am creative. For instance, I feel like starting my company, that is in a way for me a very creative outlet, even though, you know, it is not conventionally seen as a creative outlet. To create a school and to create everything around it in the company, to think of the processes, that is for me very creative work. Like I think, okay, how can this be done better? And I have to think creatively to solve problems because we have so much to do with such a small amount of people. So I always have to think and make priority, but also be creative with the time that we have. How can we make most of it? So that feels very creative. Also making the website, thinking of the designs of the website is of course something creative. I created in the beginning everything myself, the whole website, and still I take a big part into creating all the images, like thinking about how it should look and such. So I guess that is something creative too. And yes, maybe some people would consider it being creative to dance. So I also like to dance, and I did Lindy Hop, swing dancing, and also I was very enthusiastic for a while and did that a lot. Hula hoop dancing. So it is some type of circus dancing where you can do hula hoop with, amongst others, I did it with fire, you know, like, and then, yeah, that's something creative, I guess, like, but it's still music related because dance and music are so closely related, I think. So that are some other things that I really like to do. And of course, I like working in the garden. I am a gardener, so I try to produce as much of my own food as possible. So I think in some way that can be very creative too, to think about where do I put which plants, because I also want to make it look pretty. So then I have to think both about how the plants go together so that they form a small ecosystem that works basically, because some plants are not good to place together in a plot and others are, you know, because they have the same illnesses or whatnot. So yes, that is also a creative process. Another question asked, if you had children and they wanted to learn the violin, would you encourage them? I would say absolutely yes. I think I also wouldn't pressure them. So I think there's something in between, like encouraging and pressuring. Some parents really want their children to learn a classical instrument by all means. But to me, it would be more important what the child is himself or herself naturally curious about. I also realized that often people become best at what they are themselves interested in and curious about. And of course, it still requires discipline to achieve a certain goal. But I think the discipline is a lot easier to create if you feel in yourself that you actually want something, as opposed to feel pressure from the outside that you should want it. So yes, I would definitely encourage my children. If I ever had children, I would definitely want them to learn a musical instrument. If they wish to, I would be so glad to help them. I guess that would be very, very fun to teach your own children how to play music, and also to maybe see another teacher do it and see their process of learning. I am so grateful to have music in my life. So I guess that music can add something to the lives of children or any person as well. Another question is, where do you make your videos? Do you have a separate studio or are you at home? I'm at home right now, and this room is actually really small. You wouldn't say so, but basically if I do this, I can touch almost both of the walls. And if I do it in the other direction, I could also almost touch the walls. And that's not because my arms are so long. It's really like almost like a cupboard for some people. I guess especially for some of the Americans watching, it would be considered a cupboard. In the Netherlands, it's a little bit more common to have smaller rooms in your house. But anyway, it's a very small room in my house, and this is also where I have my desk. This is my working room, and of course I have a camera there, but here behind me is also my desk. So here I often sit and work, and I do all the work from this room. Okay, next question. Which languages do you speak? So I speak English, as you can hear. I learned how to speak English. I guess I started learning it at like 12 or 13 years old, but I never really got around to learn English well. I actually really started learning it when I was 18 years old, and I started studying at university, and there I had English courses, so I basically had to learn it in order to make my exams. And it was very stressful to me at first, but now I'm truly grateful that I took the time to study English. Later in life, I also learned how to speak German. I think I was 22 or 23 years old. My boyfriend/partner is from Germany. But that was actually not the reason why I started studying German. I was really interested in learning other languages. So I decided to study German, as I thought Germany is such an interesting country. It has a very interesting culture and history, and also a lot of classical music is coming from Germany. So in general, I was really interested in Germany as a country. I think it has a really rich past. So I started studying German by myself, a lot with the internet, and at some point I decided to move to Germany to stay there for a while and study German. And this is also where I met my current partner, who is German. So I definitely learned how to speak German very well in this time. And now, of course, we always speak German at home. So this is basically like my second language. And I grew up in the Netherlands, so my native language is Dutch. This is the local language in the Netherlands. Some people think it is the same language as German, but it definitely isn't. It's a different language. They are connected in some ways, but in some ways they are also very distinctly different, also in their grammar, but also in certain words. So I learned how to speak Dutch, of course, from growing up. And at some point I also got worse at speaking Dutch. Actually, on this day, I can speak Dutch less good than when I was 18 years old. And that is because I spoke so many languages other than Dutch every day that I kind of forgot how to speak my native language. So now I moved back to the Netherlands recently, and I'm quite happy that I learned to speak it again. There's also some other languages that I studied, but I'm not good at them. Maybe I have like A1 level, you know, that I could have a simple conversation with a stranger, but not on professional level. I couldn't do a professional job by any means in those languages. And those languages are Spanish. I studied that for a few months and reached like A1 level, and French, that is the language that I took in high school, and Danish, as I lived in Denmark for about half a year or a bit longer, and I cared for a Danish boy who could only speak Danish, so I had to learn it. This question, by the way, also closely ties into another question. Why did you start your academy, or how did you come to the idea? And one of the reasons that I started the academy was because I was really interested in living in different countries, experiencing different cultures. In general, I'm extremely curious about learning new things, as you might realize. And I guess some of you will also recognize that as fellow musicians. A lot of musicians are secretly a little bit nerdy and like to learn new things. So yes, I was interested in living in different countries, but I also really wanted to follow my dream to start a violin school, which I already had when I was very young. I think at 12 years old, I first thought I wanted to become a teacher, and at 15, I started my first violin website. So this has been something on my mind for a long time. And at some point I started my violin school in Germany, where I was living at the time. But I also realized in the back of my mind, at some point I probably want to go back to the Netherlands or want to move somewhere else. I didn't really see that I would live in Germany on that specific location forever. So I also wanted to create something that I could take with me. And I myself am extremely interested in online learning. Actually, for me, online learning was one of the best ways to learn. I studied so much, like including German, but also how to start a company. Currently, I'm still studying part-time for fun on an online university, but a real university, but taking all the classes online. So this is something that I'm extremely interested in online education, as to me it is a great way to learn, as I like learning autodidactically in my own time and asking the teacher questions whenever I need it, but not feeling like I should follow this very strict plan of, like, not that school feeling, but more like, hey, here you can learn all of this, here you have it, go and learn. I love that type of learning. So that combined, knowing that this is something I'm passionate about, online education, and then in combination with me being interested in starting something that I could take with me, I really got interested about the question, like, could I create a violin school that would be as good or even better than offline education one-to-one? And I thought that was quite a challenge. I mean, it can very easily just become like yet another online course where you feel no connection with the other students, with the teachers. So I wanted to create something different, something where you actually do feel like you can ask the teacher questions, you can send in your videos, you can join live sessions on Zoom. So you feel connected with the teachers and with the student group. So that is also what I decided to create. So I both created this learning system step by step, but also next to that, the whole social aspects of the violin school, I tried to integrate that into the website. And I used to be interested in creating websites. As I said before, I created my first violin website when I was 15, and at 12 I started to learn HTML and created my first website. In that time I created a website about insects, as that was one of my weird passions I used to have as a child. Like I knew a lot of Latin names of insects and exactly how they need to be, you know, how you need to treat them so that they will make little babies, basically. It was a weird passion. But anyway, I learned how to make websites. So yes, this combination of me being interested in website, online learning, and of course me being a violin teacher at the time was like, this would be the perfect combination to try to start a really good online school. It still took me a very long time to create a school because I had a certain vision, but it was so hard to create it. I can't really tell you how much I worked. I often worked 70 hours a week for like months and years. Like literally, there were several years that I worked so hard every day. I never had any single holiday. Every Saturday and Sunday I was working through the week. I barely could make my rent because I was working so much on the violin school that I had no time to work a lot, to take on a lot of students. So it was a very difficult time, but I also had this very strong vision of the school that I wanted to create. And of course, this is very hard to create an online school because it is not just creating the videos. It is creating the whole learning platform and everything connected to it, learning how to do marketing. And I was so uninterested in marketing and companies before that I never learned anything about it. I just had to learn a lot of new things in this time, and I also had to work a lot to create all the videos, arrangement, level systems, website, all the customer systems that had to be in place before people would come. So basically I took a few years to build the platform before actually sending it out to the world. And so I worked a few years to create Julia's Violin Academy, and now it is existing. And honestly, I'm beyond grateful that it worked out, because during this time, you know, you can imagine if you're working very hard for a few years and you have no idea if you will ever get a payment for all the work you've done, ever anybody would be interested in your work, and ever anybody would be willing to actually, you know, take lessons on the school that you are creating. That's extremely scary and extremely stressful. So I have to say, I cannot be more grateful that it all worked out and that I have such amazing students right now on the school, and that it worked out so well that I could even work together with another teacher, and we are doing it together now. So I'm not even alone anymore. And I also get help now behind the scenes in the website development. I get help and with the customer support. So yes, my life has improved a lot since then, and now I can have a normal work week and also do other fun things at the site. And I also created this school, which I am really happy about, and actually got even better than I hoped to imagine. Like the connection I feel with the students and the students feel with each other is even stronger than I imagined I could create online. And this is not only created by me, but also by the students that joined and that really helped to create this very cozy and nice atmosphere within the school. And that really creates also what the school is today. So yes, this is something about how we create the school, Julia's Violin Academy. By the way, if you are not a member and interested to join, you can find out more on juliasviolinacademy.com, or just go to my website and click on Academy and you will get more information about the school that I created. I also realized that I am already talking right now. I'm not sure how long the video will be, but I'm talking already for 45 minutes. So I'm a little bit tired right now of answering the questions, but I will probably, if you're interested, please let me know in the comments if I should make another Q&A video, because I definitely will if you're interested in it. And there I will answer the other questions. So if you still have any questions, post them below this video and I will be sure to get back to all of your questions in the next video. Thank you so much for all of your interest in my story and some personal things about me. I don't always find it easy to talk a lot about myself. I think, what is the interest in that, you know? But I'm actually surprised how many people are actually very interested, and I feel honored that you are interested to know more about my life. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and maybe see you in the next Q&A video, and definitely in the next tutorial video, which will go out next week on Thursday. Okay, see you everyone, and ask your questions below if you still have any questions. Bye!